as we started off with the ballot referendum to legalize cannabis here in the state of Maryland that passed overwhelmingly across the state, including in Prince George's County. And now that we're in the implementation phase of that. And so I know we have a couple of folks joining, Chair Wilson. Chair Wilson, I will give you the floor. I don't know if you want to introduce the other guests that we have with us today.
Sure thing. I know we have Will Tilburg, the director of the Maryland Cannabis Administration, and I think Andrew Garrison is also with him.
Yes.
Is there anybody else, Will?
No, just us.
Outstanding. Good. Would you like me to get started, Madam Chair?
Yes, you can go ahead and get started. Thank you.
All right. Well, colleagues, here we are going to be hearing this bill on second reader today, I'm assuming. We tried to have this meeting before to try to clear up some misinformation about this bill. So I want to be, I'm trying to be as concise as I can. But I don't know. I think number one, the issue about having this proliferation in the minority communities is part of the reason I wrote this bill. And I say that because, as you're aware, your county and a few others have tried to put in zoning regulations to control where these dispensaries are going to go. And I've made it very clear that I don't want people driving from their neighborhood into mine to buy cannabis. We've already set it up in such a poor manner that they do it for alcohol. And I'll say at the end of the day, by the time we're done with this rollout, the most licenses Prince George is going to have is 21 cannabis licenses. And is somebody able to pull the maps up? Because I'd like to do the first one, the license locations map. Nope, not that one. It's the one with just a bunch of dots.
I think it's that third tab that you've pulled up.
Yeah, there you go. So if everybody could take a look at that, that's your county right there.
Yep, and can you make that a little bigger, Dylan?
Keep going, probably a little bigger. This is just for brevity, but I want you to understand that right there is your liquor stores in Prince George's County. So you have a little less than, I guess, 300. Well, 300 would be the entire amount of cannabis dispensaries throughout the state. Again, that's the liquor stores that you have. We're going to be doing 21 licenses. And the goal for me was to make sure that they were not all crowded into specific areas, including industrial areas. Because remember, I think, we got the numbers back. I think at least more than half of these dispensaries are most likely going to be owned by minorities. And that's the first time in this nation's history that we'll have such broad participation. And these are multi-million-dollar businesses. So we don't want them crammed in an area where they'll fail, because these people are risking their lives and their livelihoods to try to bring this industry, to bring legitimacy to this industry. So, but I know there was some grave concern with my bill because it seemed to have taken local control away. However, that's not quite the case. But what the bill does do, it allows basically 1,000 feet between dispensaries, but that by the local jurisdictions can stretch that out to 2,000 feet from local jurisdictions. And they also added places of worship into basically the 500 foot area that these dispensaries could not be around. And I want to pull the list up right quick, so give me a brief indulgence. And so basically, now it cannot be 500 feet from a playground, recreation center, library, public park. In addition, pre-existing playground, recreation center, library, basically, and we added places of worship in. So if you guys are looking at that map right there, do you see the little blue dots? Mm-hmm. That's all the places a dispensary cannot be, because it's within 500 feet of one of these things. Now, we have not included places of worship on that map. So the concern of having it crammed, especially inside the Beltway, well, if you look, like I said, it's got to be it can't be within 500 feet of all of those things right there. So you see those blue dots, and we haven't added places of worship. And once you put one down, your county can stretch it out to 2,000 feet between the two of them. But I'll get back to that. So these dispensaries, they don't want to be sited, next to each other either. They don't want to be cited the same way as liquor stores. But to be very clear, before they get a license, they're going to need approval from the Maryland Cannabis Administration. They will not be issued a license unless they have local approval. So it's not just where we're giving somebody a license and they're wandering around your county. We're making sure that that these will be spread out in a very specific way. I said earlier, the reason we even created this law in the first place, even though a lot of folks voted for it, I told you I didn't, but it is law, is because I wanted to make sure that we could get rid of the illicit drug market. I'm tired of seeing people that look like me getting locked up or getting murdered for cannabis. So what we're doing here is we have to have it spread out in such a manner where there are no vacancies, because if you have vacancies with a legally controlled substance, then what you're going to have is a problem. If you don't believe me, go look at New York. They have 8,000 illegal stores up there in New York alone because they did not provide any legitimate access by opening up dispensaries. We want to make sure that we don't have that problem here. We want to make sure that everybody that gets a license is going to be properly vetted. So let me explain to you how the little vetting is going to work. 1 second. Basically, they're going to get a conditional award through the lottery. Once they get that, they're going to have, then the MCA is going to do a completion of a basically supplemental application, forensic audit, comprehensive criminal and financial background. Then they're going to start looking for properties, and this Office of Social Equity is going to be with them all along the way to the property that comply with local zoning. They're not going to approve any sites or even conduct final inspections if they have failed to receive local zoning approval. So before they do anything through the state, they've got to get county approval. We just did not want the counties interceding in such a way that they would be impossible to cite. Basically, in a nutshell, that's what it is we're trying to do. But in addition to the 2,000 feet, the last thing we've also added is a protest, to where if community members live within 1,000 feet and they themselves don't have a license, want to lodge a complaint, I think it's 10 or more, there has to be a hearing with specificity of what the issues are, if they're violating laws, if they're causing a nuisance, and that license will not be, after the hearing, if we find that this place is damaging the community, they will not be granted a new license. So we've given the community input. We've given the counties more room to spread them out. And I want you to understand the reason Will and the MCA are here is because their job is to make this successful. They're not going to cram them all in here. So, and I want to say this is not a target for Prince George's County. Like Cecil County currently has zoning requirements now that say for dispensaries that they have to buy an acre of land, even though they can only have a dispensary size that's 10,000 square feet or less. Carroll County is just prohibiting outdoor growth altogether, even though it's legal in the state. Somerset County has a license moratorium pushed to industrial zones. So I want you guys to understand it's not just y'all, but I also want you to remember, if I don't do this, then these other counties are going to cite them. And they're going to cite them. I'm worried that much like our liquor stores, they're going to be cited in areas that only have people that look like you and I. And it's not because I think the store itself is going to be damaging. I don't believe these are multi-million-dollar businesses, but I don't want people from other communities coming into our community to purchase cannabis. So I have to do this for the good of the state. As I've told you, the zoning requirements are still, if you look up on this map, you're going to see all these the pink areas. Yeah, those are about the only places we can put cannabis, because we're not going to if you have zoning for residential, there's not going to be a cannabis location there because it goes against your zoning laws. Wherever you've zoned as residential, this is only for commercial. It's got to be in non-residential areas. So to be clear, this is not something taking away the county's power. I'm just protecting not only the legitimacy of the industry, I'm making sure that they don't get stuffed all into one area. And as I said, the MCA is here to walk us through this, to walk the individuals through the licensing process and the citing process. And I believe, Will, one of the things, the MCA has the authority, it's already in statute, to prevent clustering and concentration, and they're required to consider geography when awarding a license. Those things are already in law. There wasn't actually, the bill's not that long because there's not a lot of new stuff. The biggest and newest thing really is the protestation. wanting to give these your community a chance to complain. But I understand that people generally don't trust, the government, or they don't trust because of, like I said in my testimony in the bill hearing, I got it because I see where the liquor stores are. I see how, especially your county and Baltimore County, have totally lost control of these smoke shops. But I will say this. That's a simple fix when you guys, your county people, decide to actually have a proper definition of what a smoke shop is versus what a convenience store is. That's an easy fix, guys. They just haven't done it. And I'm also a little more nervous about allowing the counties that have allowed all of this. I'm looking at the liquor store license locations and I see where they're all at. It gives me great pause to allow the counties to do that again with cannabis, because they've demonstrated many times where they're willing to put stuff, i.e. the liquor stores. And I want to make sure that this is a statewide initiative. It's not countywide. And we want to make sure it goes off and it's fair to both the licensees and the community at large. That's pretty much all I have. See if anybody has any questions.
Yes. So members of the delegation, do you all have any questions? And I just want to clarify for the public that's viewing, the legislation that we're discussing right now is House Bill 805, Senate Bill 537, that is currently pending in the Maryland General Assembly this legislative session. So I just wanted to reference that for the general public that may be watching. Delegate Harrison, I see your hand.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you just, for clarification, give two more pieces of information? If I'm not mistaken, the distance between dispensaries was an issue that we've heard from some of our constituents. And if I'm not mistaken, they can be regulated, or 2,000 feet, I think was the number. If you would clarify that, and then also if you could just talk about some of the amendments that have been succinctly the amendments that you put in since the original bill, because I think a lot of people are still probably looking at the original bill and don't have access to the amendments. So if you could talk about those two things, I think that may be helpful.
Well, as I said, and I appreciate that. So yes, the political subdivisions are now allowed to extend the distance between dispensaries from 1,000 to 2,000 feet. The reason we still have a 1,000 foot limit is because if you go to Baltimore City, it'd be almost impossible for them to be properly sited if everything's 2,000 square feet away. That's almost a quarter mile, I believe so. And but you're allowed to stretch it up to 2,000 feet between dispensaries. And as I said before, you're going to have 21 of them throughout your very large county because that's the population you have. And the other amendment besides changing those provisions was also making sure that that there was a way to protest for individuals who are not being good members of our community. Those are the two major amendments. The bill, as originally drafted last year, of course, this is just what I would have called a touch-up bill, but wanting to just make sure that that we did hear your constituents. I think there's just a lot of misunderstanding. Like all 300 of them were going to come to Prince George's. At the most, you'll literally only have 21.
And that includes those that were medical dispensaries that converted. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So, and I think you have 8 of those. And it was very demonstrative because even with the medical, I thought that when we looked at like Prince George's County, you originally had 14. Only 9 of them are operational right now because of the humongous zoning challenges that they were already facing. And again, if you look at that map, there are not a lot of places they can go. And it's a challenge to us to make sure that they're spread out, not just through the state, but through the jurisdiction in such a way where there's equity. Because the goal is, I don't believe these are not going to be like liquor stores. They're not going to be treated like liquor stores. If they are, unlike your liquor stores, you can protest that license and make sure they never get it back. But I wanted to make sure they were spread out through our counties enough to where they're equitable. Because I do not want people driving from my neighborhood to yours. That's not fair. I want them to be able to get that cannabis where they live.
Thank you.
And I saw there were some messages in the chat.
Yes, I was just going to get to those, Chair
Okay,
Wilson.
go ahead.
So the first item I see in the chat is I think folks are also not seeing the numbers and not understanding the breakdown of dispensary versus grower versus processor and micro versus standard was the first thing. And if either you or Mr. Tilburg or someone can just explain what those are, because those are different things. I think people are just seeing a number and thinking that number is all dispensaries, which it's not.
Hey, Wilbur, could you take it?
You just call me Wilbur, Mr. Chairman.
That's your name, right? Will. Oh.
Yeah. Good morning. Will Tilburg with the Maryland Cannabis Administration. Chair Wilson keeps inviting me to events like this, and he knows it all better than me. So I have very little role, but the question in terms of number of licenses first is a good one. So there are growers, processors, and dispensaries in this first round for which the lottery will be held next week, which is social equity only. As the chair noted, half of those that are being entered into the lottery are majority Black-owned businesses. 3/4 are majority minority. And so the overall intent here is balancing local control with the ability of these new social equity businesses to cite. In terms of Prince George's County, for dispensaries, the licenses were awarded by county, and there are up to 9 more that can be awarded through this lottery next week. That doesn't mean next week there's going to all of a sudden be 9 dispensaries. In addition, in Prince George's, it does take 12 to 18 months for these businesses to work through the local approvals and the approval with MCA. And there is not a final license issued, the ability to dispense cannabis until, as the chair noted, there is local approval has been granted for that site. For growers and processors, the award in statute is a little different. It's actually by region. And so the state was split up into 4 regions. Prince George's County is part of the southern region. Within that region, there are up to 4 standard grow licenses, which can be up to 300,000 square feet of flowering canopy, and 6 micro grow licenses within the region. And so this is Prince George's County, Calvert, Charles, and St. Mary's. Yes, thank you. That are part of that. So it's split across those counties where there would be up to 4 growers and 6 micro growers in that area.
Okay, thank you. And since you're talking about the lottery, and I do see your hand, Delegate Alston, the next thing, it's sort of linked question is linked to that. Can you please explain the lottery rollout and the numbers in social equity versus main lottery?
Sure. So we the first round, as I was saying, is exclusively social equity businesses. So what's in statute is that there's up to 3 rounds of license awards that can occur. The first round is exclusively social equity businesses, which is individuals who lived or went to school in areas that were disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. So that is the first round of licensing that occurred. The application round was in November, closed on December 12th. We have reviewed those applications. There were 1,700 that were submitted. Over 1,500 have passed. It was a pass-fail basis and will be entered into that lottery, which again is occurring next week. And those awards, there's a total of 179 statewide, and that is across the 3 license categories: grow, process, and dispensary. And again, within that number is up to 9 additional dispensaries within Prince George's County. After this round is over, MCA has the ability to perform another licensing round, which would be not exclusive to social equity businesses, but would be open up to the general public.
Thank you, Mr. Tilburg. And Delegate Alston, I see your hand.
Good morning. So I have 2 questions. The first one is if you could go back over the protest provision. Is that for people who are currently operating and the community wants them to close, or is it prior to the license being issued? So that's the first question.
The protest, because there would be nothing to protest as far as, and I can read along what's actually considered, because the way it goes is, so there has to be a license issued, and this is upon renewal, within at least 30 days before the renewal of a license, which is tends to be 5 years. The residents, commercial tenants who are not holders of or applications for licenses, i.e. the competition, they have to be located within 1,000 feet of the premises. they can do this on the basis of a violation of the, obviously this title, civil or criminal law, conduct by a licensee that creates or maintains conditions that allow other individuals to act in a manner that disturbs the peace, including obstruction, public right-of-way, assault, battery, other disorderly crimes, vandalism, littering, or any other violation established by the administration, and be signed under oath. It'll be after because remember, and the one thing that they want, what they'll consider is the issues arising out of these complaints and the performance in that prior 4-year period. What they will not consider, MCA will not consider zoning issues. So again, there would be no reason to protest before a business actually came up, because it wouldn't be a nuisance at that point.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question is, I'm sure some of our colleagues across the aisle will do this, but I honestly haven't had a chance to read it. I've known you for a long time. I trust your work. I haven't read this bill. Will you special order this so I could read it over the weekend? I'm sure that someone else is going to ask, but I don't want to be the one to ask on the floor.
I mean, it's going to be what it is. I guess I'm sure some of the special order, it really is only, man, you understand, like I said, guys, this isn't a new bill. If you look, the largest part of this bill literally is that part about the protest. Everything else, like all of the 500 feet, that was already in there. We just added the words pre-existing, and we added places of worship. And again, it's not that complex of a bill. It literally is about 3 pages long, but I'm sure somebody's going to special order it nonetheless.
Okay, that was it. I just want to be able to read it make sure I get my input from the council members. It sounds good to me. I don't have a problem from what you said, but I also haven't read the bill. So I appreciate it.
Concern is a lot of people, especially your council members, haven't read the bill. And that's why I said they're getting through this thing where they're being told what to do. We're not. We're just making sure we protect these businesses and also do something that's going to benefit statewide. I hope that they do read the bill.
And the reprint is up on our floor system, everyone. I pulled up the reprint this morning. It's about 5 pages long. So it's not a long bill, like the chair said. Even with the amendments, it's showing up on my computer as about 5 pages.
Well, I appreciate your time, and I'll definitely read it with them over the weekend. Thank you so much, Chairman Wilson, for your time.
Thank you.
Delegate Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The brief part is a comment. The other part is a question. The comment is, I agree with that. I really feel like we should have, done this last year. I think leaving it to the locals here was going to. I always thought it was going to be a problem. And I've spoken to a number of the council members myself of saying how, look, it's really not that many licenses that we're talking about. The other thing, and this is for anyone who's watching, I would encourage you to go into one of these dispensaries, right? Like, there's the bill, but go into them. They are designed to look like Apple stores. Like, they're so far from the liquor store experience that it's almost a disrespectful comparison. Frankly, I would really encourage everyone in the delegation. I'm not saying you have to purchase anything. I'm just saying that to be like an informed legislator, you should actually go into one of these. And I would recommend a Black-owned one, Marion, Maine, on Central Avenue to go. And you can see what I'm talking about. So that's the first part. The second part is, and this is for the chair, given that we know how terrible the alcohol density is, particularly in Prince George's and Baltimore City, my friend, I would really encourage if we had an opportunity for us to talk offline between you and the 2 jurisdictions of how we can rectify that at some point soon, instead of patchwork that we continually do, because you spend a lot of time in my county, my district in particular. It's ridiculous, right? And it's disrespectful to the folks who live there. And we keep talking about this year in, year out. So it's like, we have the largest Black caucus. We have leadership here. We should all work together to figure out how we can create a pathway to address the alcohol issue, which everyone's comparing it to anyway, ultimately and forever. So that's my ask, Chairman.
Well, and I'll say the first part is about the quality of the stores. One thing about Will Tilburg is he's almost a villain to most of these people, because he strictly enforces not only the letter of the law, but making sure that these are benefits to the community. So when I talk to most, people, they don't like Will at all because he's doing his job. So that's a good thing. Again, I think that's a great idea, Jazz. Go in one of these stores and see what you're going to see something different. And as far as the alcohol bill, I would love to work with you. I was patently offended. I think you guys have a little over 200 some odd liquor licenses, one black owned. That's appalling. And I have no problem seeing that. I don't know what the methodology is, but I'm sure between all these brains, we can figure something out because the proliferation, it's embarrassing, it's offensive. And like I said, and excuse me for saying this, but my father-in-law brought this up to me, and I want you to understand, this is where my mind was when I wrote this bill. So bear with me. There's some derogatory terms that some people refer to white people as. One of them was the word honky. But if you look up where that came from in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, white people coming into black communities and honking their horn for drugs or prostitutes, meaning we have always been the dumping ground for all this. So that's where that terminology came from. I'm trying to avoid that, people leaving their communities and coming to ours. I don't think this is going to be a detriment wherever it's placed, but nonetheless, even if it's a beautiful Apple store, I don't want people driving through our communities. I want them to be members of their own community. I want them to go to their community and get cannabis. They don't need to be driving here. They don't need to be driving to Prince George's. So I'm more than down with the alcohol thing because that's infuriating. So I look forward to work with you guys on the out of session.
Thank you, Chair Wilson. Thank you, Delegate Lewis. I wholeheartedly agree. We can certainly come together and try to find a meeting of the minds regarding that. Delegate Denise Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first question I have is, one, can we get this map sent to us?
Yes, it should have been sent late last night to everyone.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, I'll check my emails. I apologize. But also, Delegate Lewis brought up a very good point and almost setting a standard for these dispensaries. Is that going to be, because we don't know what the specs are, is that going to be the standard for every store, every licensee?
And I know Will's going to get in, he can explain real quick. There's no standard. We're not requiring people to look like an Apple store. And Will's going to, he'll explain, but it's basically these people's millions of dollars. And they can be accessible to the public. There's an ID process of getting in and getting out to make sure there's so many things that they have to do technologically, security wise. They just end up looking nice because of all the requirements. Will, go ahead.
There it is.
Yeah, from a chair's right that the nice luxurious look is sort of reflective of the cost investment in these businesses. That's not a regulatory requirement. What is a regulatory requirement is that there's a public waiting zone where there's ID checks before you would go back into the store, and you're accompanied by someone going into the area where you can purchase. They have to have secure vaults, with like a bank vault type door. There's specifications there, 24-hour surveillance, security on site. There were initial concerns by the General Assembly about theft and robbery and the like, and so they're very secure facilities for that reason. But they're also, these businesses are making significant investments in the communities that they're going into. And so they do put a lot of money to make the stores nice and attract customers.
Okay, thank you. And then I just want to be clear, we're getting 21 more licenses. Is that what it is?
So after this next round, the lottery is next week, there can be up to 21. So currently there are 9 in Prince George's that are operational. There are 3 within the county that are pre-approved but not operational because they weren't able to site under the existing zoning restrictions in the county. And so there's an additional 9 that could be awarded. So that's a total of 21 after this licensing round.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Lewis, I see you want to.
Sorry for the second bite, Madam Chair.
Okay.
The only thing I want to add is just for folks to remember too. So one of the things that I personally pushed really, really hard for when we were designing this was the community repair and restore fund, right? So 30% of the cannabis sales go to this community repair and restore fund, which goes to the neighborhoods that had people who were incarcerated for cannabis sales. It goes to their neighborhoods. of course, we're high up on that, right? So the only reason I'm flagging that is that the fewer stores that are able to get set up, just writ large, means there's fewer sales. Fewer sales, that means less dollars going into like our high needs communities. And everyone wants to have this conversation on crime and juvenile justice. Like if we want, you know, unrestricted dollars going to these neighborhoods and these kids, so not tied to you being part of probation, not tied to you being part of the system at all. I mean, just to those neighborhoods, then we need this revenue to flow there, which means we need the stores to get set up. And it's like all connected. I know often we don't think about like the physical store being a part of that, but we worked on this for multiple years. First within the Black Caucus, then there was a broader study group, and then Chair Wilson and Chair Atterbury took it from there. That's disproportionately going to benefit us, the Community Repair and Restore Fund. So I just want to put that on the record because everyone wasn't here for all of that. And I just want to remind them that, you know, if the stores don't get set up, then the sales don't happen. The sales don't happen, then the Community Repair and Restore Fund doesn't get its funds, which means that those benefit payments to our neighborhoods don't happen, right? And all that, I think, is part of the revitalization for some of these neighborhoods that we want to see. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Delegate Lewis. That's a very good point. Delegate Taylor, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for you guys being here and clearing all this up for us, because every time I go back to my community, I get these questions. So I'm just kind of following up on Delegate Roberts' question. So we know that after the social equity round lottery, which is next week, we might have up to 21 licenses for dispensaries. What happens when the next round, when anyone can jump into the lottery, any qualified applicant can jump into the lottery? Then at that point, how many might be in Prince George's? Or is that a thing? That's one question.
I don't know, Mr. Tilburg, I don't know if you're.
Go ahead, Will.
Sure. There is a second round that's authorized in May of this year or later. There's a triggering event for that licensing round, which is the submission of a disparity study to determine whether I mentioned that it could be open to the general public. That actually depends on a disparity study that's being performed at present. I think is scheduled to be submitted in September. So the state would evaluate the results of that study and determine whether it would be a general public or if there's remedial measures warranted, meaning race conscious measures within the licensing process moving forward. So it's not certain what that licensing round will look like. The MCA is in charge of distributing the licenses across the state in a way that reflects the population so that they're spread out. I don't have a specific number, but we because the round hasn't happened, right? But we internally think that it would be about 9 additional, the same as the first round. So you'd be looking at a cap of 30. That is the end of the licensing in all likelihood for dispensaries, because we would be reaching the cap that's allowed for 300 statewide. So it's a good, back of the envelope, 30 dispensaries is likely what Prince George's would see under the existing statute.
Okay, and great. So you mentioned that the disparity study results wouldn't be, we wouldn't see those until September, but the lottery might be in May. So are we saying then probably we're going to push it back beyond May?
Yeah, so the statute
September?
initially says it can't happen before May, but there's also this triggering event of needing the study to be submitted. And I think that's September. That's not our office that performs that. So I'm not certain. But yes, we couldn't perform it until that study is submitted and there's an evaluation done.
Okay, great. And then should I have one more question, Madam Chair?
Sure.
So in our district, we have like Bowie Town Center, right, which is really struggling right now. And I'm sure it would be attractive to a dispensary. It's a pretty large, town center. So I'll have folks to ask me, well, Bowie Town Center is probably going to have 3 or 4 of these dispensaries. Well, I'm not exactly sure how to, rebut that if the 1,000 feet buffer is really what we're looking at. So can you help me with that?
It's up to a 2,000 foot buffer, number one. And as we've made it very clear, Will has a duty to make sure that they're spread equitably throughout the jurisdiction. beyond the fact that no business like this would want to be placed next to another business just like this one. They don't want to be sited next to each other. These are millions of dollars being invested. They want, their own foot traffic. And again, it's and Will, how much is 2,000 feet? It's a quarter mile, right?
It's close to half
Yeah,
mile. It's
I'm
like
saying, I don't know how
4
big
tenths.
Bowie Town Center is, but we're talking about almost a half mile. And that's the minimum. We're saying that's the minimum. That's not the goal that we run up to that line and put another one. The goal is to spread them throughout the county. Again, if my goal is to get rid of the illegal drug market, that's why I kept saying it over and over again last year, guys, because I wanted to create a legislative intent for the purpose of defending when we tell people, no, you can't be cited right on the Beltway, right on the line in DC and have foresighted there because they're going to want to. But we have an obligation getting rid of the illicit drug market is making sure everyone has access. So that's another reason why we have to spread it out. And Will has to make sure he takes the jurisdiction, he takes that into account as far as the way that they're spread up to make sure they're not bunched. Now, Will, anything else?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Mr. Chair. So the business, again, this is a process. It's not a vape shop or a liquor store where it's sort of overnight it's coming in. This is over 12 months. They're trying to find a location. They're sharing the information with MCA, with the Office of Social Equity to help figure out where they can site. So there's a real back and forth with the state and the business figuring out. So we know where they're planning to go, and we'll be responsive to Prince George's County, other communities, keeping elected officials and local officials informed as to how this rolls out, so that you're aware when communities are getting additional stores.
Right. And also too, in the chat, Delegate Alston put that there is also a school in 1/5 of a mile of Bowie Town Center. So that's also going to probably preclude Bowie Town Center because if it's proximity to a school there. So there's
And
also,
remember, also, we haven't put it up there, places of worship.
correct.
If there's a church around, and one last thing I want to make sure we put in there, I use the word pre-existing for a reason, because we also don't want people basically putting up, I don't know, a playground to keep cannabis out. So we said pre-existing for that reason, to make sure that you don't, after somebody's got a license, that you don't then put a playground in and then they have to move. So we just want to make sure we give these businesses an opportunity.
Are there any additional questions for Chair Wilson? I don't see any.
Delegate Lehman has one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Chair Wilson, for your presentation. I missed a lot of it, unfortunately, but I think I get the gist of it. I was just curious. I, along with a number of my colleagues, are former county council members and used to all the complexities of especially Prince George's County zoning and land use rules. They're pretty, they're unique in the state. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about, or if there is a nexus with the concept of a, what's referred to as a by right, use in any, and given that, I guess the effort to spread them out, how would that work?
What was that first word? A by right?
Yeah, like when something, and Andrea, if you can help me out, and I think you know what I'm trying to ask. When something is considered by right, it's like the zoning authority, and that it, in this case in Prince George's, really can't turn it down. It's very hard to. But how would that work with this concept of trying to spread these out? So that they don't all end up. Like you have gas stations where there's one on every corner type of thing.
Right. Because, and again, that's why I was putting it as part of it. They're working with the Maryland Cannabis Administration. They have a job to spread them out.
Mm-hmm.
So this, I guess you say, because, and I think that's one of Prince George's largest problems in the way the council deals with it. Every vape shop has by right. They have this, and it's versus having some ability to limit either the number, which we've already done, explain the importance of spreading them out through their, throughout the communities, because we're trying to get rid of the illicit drug market. So these people don't just get to tell you where they go. They have to work through the process with Will. They have to make sure they get proper zoning. And again, if you look at that map, you'll see they've got to be at least 2,000 feet apart. And that map with all those blue dots, and if you see the one that actually has the little pink or the pink areas, those are basically the places that they can kind of go. So just by design, by the 2,000 feet, by our overall state overarching goals, because this is a state thing. This is not It's not Prince Georgia specific, and it is definitely not Charles County specific. We have a goal throughout the state to provide safe, affordable, and accessible cannabis. We can't do that if they're all clumped up, like you said, like the gas stations or the liquor stores. So part of his big job is prior to getting their license, because they're not even, you can't think of it as, hey, we're giving them a license, go out there and do you. It's part of after they get that pre-license, or their conditional license, they have to go through a very difficult process, including getting, the correct building, getting zoned through the local government. All those things have to happen well before they'll get that license to sell a single seed.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm gonna scroll through. I don't see any additional hands.
Delegate Healy?
Oh, Delegate Healy.
Sorry, I tried to find the button. But the only question I had is I went online to look for cannabis dispensaries near Hyattsville and on the map, and it popped up all kinds of weird stuff. So I was wondering if you or Jazz, somebody can provide us, the delegation, with some locations that we might be able to visit over the weekend so we could get a look.
Well, I know that Jazz probably knows all of them. So I'm sure he can get back with you. But as far as, the good ones, I don't know the products. He probably knows which has good products or not.
Well, I'm not looking to shop. I'm just looking to look.
Well, if you are, he's the man. No, I'm sure. I don't really know where they are, but I know that Doug Lewis would know.
I mean, I saw one that had a vending machine. I knew that couldn't be right.
I'm sure MCA can get us a list of the existing ones in Prince George's County. Was that something you can get to us, Mr. Tilburg?
Yeah. So on our website, cannabis.maryland.gov, there's a data dashboard that has an interactive map. You can zoom in and see exactly where they are within the county, and it has the address, but we're also happy to follow up with the specific addresses.
Okay, that would be great.
Thank you.
And Delegate Lewis, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to be clear, I do not know where all of these are. As we were working on, just in case anyone's watching, as we were working on this, I made a personal mission, and Will and Chair Wilson know this, to tour almost every facility in the state so that I could understand what the industry folks are doing and saying and educate myself. That being said, most of the people I did see in the stores were seniors. I also just want to put that out.
I know that you're dedicated to weed, Jazz, so I appreciate that dedication, buddy.
Yes, and we can chat offline, Delegate. When I was on the work group, the referendum work group, we had to do tours all throughout the state.
Okay, thank you.
And I know there's a location in Greenbelt, for an example, which is within our district. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, any other hands? I seem to be not seeing everyone's hand. So speak now, forever hold your peace. Nope. Okay. All right. We're Chair Wilson. Thank you so much, Mr. Tilburg, and your other colleague, Mr. Garrison. Thank you guys so much for joining us this morning. I know this was a little bit of a long conversation, but I think a very important conversation for the members of the delegation and just for those who are viewing our meeting this week. And so we really, really do appreciate you all taking the time this Friday morning to join with us and to talk through this legislation. So we really do appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you. All right. Next on our agenda.